Our story continues with our hero, named Ian, becoming the first master of taming in history, managing to defeat a huge and scary blue-eyed wolf, who was 10 levels taller than him. And right now, his reincarnation is happening, as well as his home, in which he received his first assignment from Sensei. Everything shines around him. He himself is happy to have become a master tamer. After he got his new role by opening the system, he decided to think about what he should do first. Here he was immediately given a new task, namely to tame the summoned beast. Immediately, everything changed beside him. He was already standing with a staff in his hands and began to say that he would tame the bloody wolf, like in that trailer. It was really something. He should have been a first at Kylon by now. Then he looked up at the mountain, and around it was a very clear view of the blue sky. It seemed that absolutely nothing foretold trouble, even if you could just take a rest. Suddenly, our hero's face changed very much, and he was perplexed. Looking at the bottom, it looks like there were already those who had transferred to the new class, because after him there was an army of almost 20 people who also got their assignments. It looked about as if they were trying to capture the bloody wolf themselves. After looking at them, Ian didn't think anyone would be quicker than him, but decides to go over and see how things are going in general. As suddenly, one takes the staff, reads a book, the second waving something, the third already firing a bow. It seems that this is a whole team of players who decided to go to the next level together. A shot, and the fire hits right into the red wolf, which starts growling. One of them starts shouting out that health is exactly the same as it was before, when our archer tried to capture. In response, the girl offers to simply seal it. The sorcerer takes a suvoi and begins to bind the wolf. Literally a few seconds pass, and he is already trapped. As suddenly, the wolf begins to growl. His eyes begin to pancake. He abruptly begins to jump, and what all in utter bewilderment. No one can believe their eyes. It seems that the wolf really wants to get out, which the rest of the team make it a point not to miss and catch him. And then, just 15 seconds later, the wolf was already out of his trap. Everyone was just shocked and perplexed, because it would be much harder to meet a bloody wolf again, after they had already missed him. How nice that Ian was able to observe him, apparently. It is indeed difficult to capture a monster of such a high class. Also, he concluded that they are also long to find, so he thought it was probably better to start catching absolutely any monster encountered. Looking again into the distance, from the cliff, he decided to think and declared that he was a true gamer, which made him wonder how many wolves he could capture with his score in leadership. Suddenly, by a coincidence, just such under his rock began to pass at least 3 wolves. With absolutely no time to think, the bow and began to shoot, while the sun continued to glare. And now, the first wolf is already lying on the floor, while our hero opens his uvoi. The system informed him that the first wolf had already been successfully captured. It was the most common wolf that lived in the meadows, had fast legs, and also sharp fangs. But the only thing that surprised him was, what is timid? Do monsters really have personalities? Without thinking long, he saw an angry wolf, who apparently was a friend of the previous one, begin to pounce on him. The archer scratched his head and realized that, okay, let's keep going. And again, a shot. From the cliff, you can see not blue sky, but red glare. After successfully catching the wolf, the archer decided to see what its identity was. Suddenly, he could not understand anything. He was completely shocked, because it was also a wolf, but already with a different personality. But his attributes are much higher and called, he is different. Looking at this situation, the archer realized that monsters of the same type and level can, it turns out, have different attributes. At this moment, another pack of wolves began to pass under the rock. That's why our archer decided to check which of these wolves would have the highest attributes. He came up with a genius idea and decided to catch wolves all day. and he will capture those wolves who will have the highest attributes, and again takes a shot into the blue sky. Suddenly, after another capture, the system informed him that his attribute was increased by 1 level after a series of successful captures, from which our hero was very happy and realized that to repeat and repeat, that's life. At that time, he was added another title, an expert on wolves for capturing a large number of them. His advantage now will be that he will be able to identify the strongest wolves, even without capture. Now he will not have to catch absolutely everyone in a row. Our hero cannot understand why they could not do exactly the same only for all the other participants, although he himself realizes that he is asking too much. Without thinking long, he decides to see how to use his superpower after all, and begins to do his analysis. Among the 4 wolves, he saw at once one level 11, another level 12, another level 11, another level 10 wolves. Based on this, you can understand that the analysis works perfectly. At the same time, he decided to put a lot of emphasis on the level 11 wolf. He walked closer to him and asked himself, would this one be now? At the same time, the wolf's eyes became red. It was obvious that he was very angry and began to growl at him. The archer, not for a second, was not frightened, but only began to laugh and ask the wolf what he would do. Obviously, the wolf rushed at him in an attack, which our hero was, of course, ready for. And he kept smiling, took out his bow, and shot at the wolf, from which he fell quite ridiculously. Now, our hero decided to teach him a lesson, and said that now the wolf seems to know his place, and made a grab for him. After analyzing the wolf, it was clear that he was level 11 as no surprise. But what was really worth attention, and even made our hero's face smile and surprise, was that the wolf was level 11, but his attributes were higher than the wolf at level 13. Besides, it can evolve. Is it really capable of evolution? Other wolves our hero doesn't need anymore. He just needs to focus on training this one. He kindly takes and lets all the other wolves go, while he sits down with his main one, who he wanted to train, and asks him to bark. From that point on, he decided to call him by his new name, which is Lie, and the wolf seems to like his new name too. After that, their closeness increased, and so did Lie's loyalty, as the system itself informed him. He was very surprised because he didn't even know there was such an attribute as fidelity. Great. Now it's time to start hunting, he said to his wolf, which made him growl, and they began to run somewhere together. The only question I have is, how can you love someone who beat you? Meanwhile, the situation in the city began to heat up, with the Lotus Guild becoming much weaker when Jin Sung left it. He said he was changing his class. I wonder how he's doing. That's what his friend was thinking. Who wouldn't let him change his class, and was now sitting there practically alone? That's why he got information about the summoner class and began to study it. He didn't understand what was wrong with those headlines. He decided to look at it more closely and saw the analysis of the archer, that is his friend, in which he reported that he is already summoner 12th level. And here are his conclusions after the hunt. He stated that this class is very funny, and he became a caller at the very beginning of the launch server. But the only thing that embarrassed him, that is, a small disadvantage, is that the experience is very, very slow. All the people who wanted to change the class or have already done it constantly complained that the level increase is very slow. And this is done because the experience is divided between your summoned creatures. Reading all these headlines, his friends started to think that this is just the beginning, so naturally there will be a lot of complaints. But even looking at this picture, things look pretty sad because Jin Sung dropped his character just for this. But it seems to be true that the level rise is very slow indeed at first. He begins to think that it might take a long time to reach level 20 and join the guild. Meanwhile, back to Kylan. The sun has already set behind the mountains, and our heroes continue their hunt. When suddenly, completely unexpectedly, the system alerts Jin Sung that he has already reached level 20. A little earlier in the hunt, he asked his wolf to attack first, immediately after the arrow flew, so that he would not attack first and take damage. He activated another superpower, and his dexterity increased by as much as 37%. And so he takes his bow, throws his arrow, and it hits the exact target. Immediately after it, our wolf began to run at the animal. He ran up very quickly, after which immediately bit her and began to fight her. A very strong battle. At this time, our hero was already running up to help, and noticed that his level and attributes lower than the red fox. That's why he ran up to help, but he realizes that the wolf is really very good. Because he attacks without any fear? Maybe it's because of his personality? Once more he praised his wolf, and threw another arrow to help him the wolf. Of course he growled back, and continued to attack the red fox. After this was successfully completed, the system gave them both 265 experience points each. Then the archer realized that the experience is shared equally, which means he needs to pump Lai to at least the 15th level. That's why, without wasting a second, and activates the ability to train the newcomer, and begins to train him. Then asks him to give a paw, then to bring a stick. It was noticeable that the pet's potential improved with each training session. They successfully managed to find a common language, and the pet was able to learn some necessary skills, after which the mutual understanding between them in the team grew. Suddenly, the pet begins to transform into something else. Around him again begins to glow. Everything shines, and the system reports that Lai has already reached level 15. Great. Ready, but the only thing that bothers our hero is that they swing much slower than he thought. Maybe it's probably because the experience is divided equally. Even so, he realizes that Lai is really fun to train with, and he gets a lot stronger with each level he raises. After that, Jean suggests that he now go bear hunting. Now he realizes that he can go to another location to hunt. And so, they are already in the woods near the bridge, around which are walking in clumps of big bears. One of them notices the two friends and starts growling sharply at them. At this time, the system appears and gives our heroes on top of a few more experience points, as well as a notification that they have learned some super skills. And then, the archer realizes that they did not work in vain. I need to see what this ability. It turns out that the blessing of the warrior Berserk gives you and his comrades an increase in attack power, as much as 30% for a full 20 minutes. But if you use it on the pet, it will increase its attack power by as much as 100%. Looking at this situation, the archer realizes that this ability is very good. Further, they began to study the tactics of the newcomer, which they also pumped. It turned out that the leadership increased by 10%, as well as understanding of the orders. And if the leadership also increased, then perhaps already be able to capture the bear. That's why the archer does not waste a second and offers to catch them. But before that, he wonders if there is someone stronger for Lai. Without thinking twice, he immediately begins to make a grab and realizes that his lead has increased significantly, and it is precisely because of the rookie's tactics. He pulls out the stats and wants to compare them to the attributes that Lai has. He absolutely in no way can understand what is happening, and begins to question whether Lai is really a wolf, because then why he does not evolve. Look at this situation. He decides to let this bear go for now, and goes back to the wolf asking if he had a good rest, because it's already time to hunt. He activates several abilities at once, and begins to run with it, ordering it to attract this bear. The wolf immediately ran to carry out the order, and threw himself into the fight. He bit sharply into the bear's neck, and they got into a fight. It was really, really scary to watch. It looked like the wolf was ready to destroy the bear, even though he had a much lower level than the bear. Seeing this situation, the archer asks him to continue, and is surprised that the newcomer's tactics Really very good, because his pet perfectly understands what he needs from him. While the wolf and the bear continue to fight, the archer shoots him and they destroy him together. And immediately, there is an alert from the system, which reports that the pet is already upgraded to level 19, which makes everyone very happy. The hero begins stroking his pet and asks him to keep growing, because soon, at this rate, he will no longer be equal. But the only thing he's worried about is that they're too slow to pump. That's why the archer decides to take quests after the moment when he reaches level 20. Tired, the archer decides that, for today, that will be all, and the gamer's life too. Meanwhile, it's getting dark outside the window. Wiping his head with a towel, John decides he needs to check another forum before going to bed. Surely some losers are complaining again right now. He sits down at the computer and realizes that this is really true. A lot of people start whining about how the summoner is useless. Summoned creatures are too weak, pumping is too slow, and so on. He concluded that there's really too much whining here, but the only thing he was really interested in was if there's any feedback from people above level 15 here, and he was very surprised, because he could not find anyone, despite the fact that he was already level 20th. He began to think there must be a lot of players already above level 15th. But here, on the forum, no one. Oh, he was able to find someone level 13 and decides to check him out. His abilities were exactly the same as our heroes. But the only thing that surprised him was Obsession, in which 30% of a creature's attributes are transferred and summon or absorb the soul of its pet. This very much surprised our hero, because he does not have such an ability. At the same time, he realizes that it really is very good, because you can say that it is the bread of the caller, and since it does not need to share experience, leveling up is much faster, and he concludes, why absorb a pet that can fight itself? Moreover, if also the attributes are not fully transferred. He sits back and thinks that even the level of the summoned beast is not raised. This is the most interesting thing in the game for the caller, and he, for some reason, does not have this ability, although he does not really somehow want it. Suddenly, all of a sudden, he begins to think, what if the abilities of ordinary conscripts are different from his? In that case, he's already settled into his chair and started smiling. If that's really the case, what is his ability that normal summoners don't have? Our story doesn't end there. It just continues. So be sure to subscribe and like the channel so you don't miss out. And it would be fun to see your impressions in the comments.